Hey, Paul, what came in the mail?
We got this invitation, Tim. It's from the minstrel.
Holy love sonnet. What kind of invitation? Some kind of party?
Yeah, well, it's a barbecue.
Yeah, I'll take a rain check.
To the bat poles!
Welcome to the Bat Poles. Mercy alive, what an impetuous pair. Made up of Tim in Tokyo and my brother Paul in Hanover, New Hampshire.
I'd prefer an impetuous banana for breakfast, thank you. Oh, there goes my printer.
Our theme version this time is a guitar tutorial. There are plenty of those out there. From the Mr. Tabs YouTube channel. Titled Batman Theme, Neil Hefti and his Orchestra and Chorus Cover, Guitar Tab, Lesson, Tutorial. Published October 31st, 2021. In the video, we see the guitar tabs along the bottom as someone in a pretty authentic-looking 66 Batman costume, who we can't see above chest level, plays the guitar, and the background is the Bat computer.
Yes, and it's all in close enough shot. You know, it's the camera's pretty close to that backdrop as well as to the guitarist that it looks fairly convincing, even though it's probably just a poster of the Bat computer.
I think it's it's just a still from the show that's been inserted in there. Mm-hmm. The version itself reminded me. It sounded like the answer to the question, what if Eddie Van Halen covered the Batman theme?
Yeah, it's too bad he didn't get around to it as far as we know, but there's a lot of concert footage out there. Maybe we'll come across one sometime. I think what I enjoyed most about this tutorial, and, you know, the tutorials start to kind of melt together after a while, although this one it was nice to see the notes, you know, zooming by at the bottom. It was almost like Dance Dance Revolution or something. It shows you what the melody looks like, and so you can prepare for what dance steps you have to take next in order to make the video game do the video game's thing. What I liked most about it was that stuff like tap would pop out like fight words from a Bash Pow fight on the Batman show. You know, so what was it, like G sharp, you know, pentamental or something? I don't know enough about musical terms to get that right. It was funny. I think there was riff. When he started playing, guess what? A riff, or licks, when he started, you know, doodling around up the neck. So that was nice. It felt more like it was Batman theme appropriate rather than just another, you know, run through of the theme on heavy metal guitar and big fat quotation marks. It's camp. That's it.
Yeah, metal guitar and quotation marks. Apologies for the occasional printer sounds in the first 30 minutes of the show. This time we're talking about Madge Blake and the character of Aunt Harriet. And I think let's start with whatever biographical info we were able to find about Madge Blake. Mm-hmm. Some of this is thanks to Mr. Glee, who sent us a link on archive.org, which I'll link to Today's Health magazine from March 1960, which features both an article by Madge about her situation and advocating for empty nest parents to have something else to do once the kids grow up. The title of the article is "They Couldn't Put Me on the Shelf," and another article by Joseph N. Bell about Madge's acting career called "Grandmother with Grease Paint." So we're drawing on that somewhat, and the rest is mainly from those old standbys, Wikipedia and IMDb.
Yeah, there's not a lot out there.
No.
Mr. Glee's article really filled in some gaps for me. It's nice to hear, since we don't have a memoir like we do for Adam West and Burt Ward, it was great to have something written more or less in her voice, although Joseph N. Bell was the not so ghosty ghostwriter of this article. They couldn't put me on the shelf since he's listed as, Madge Blake as told to Joseph N. Bell.
Mm-hmm.
This magazine is kind of interesting in itself. It's published by the American Medical Association. It's Today's Health, published by the American Medical Association, as it says on the front on the cover. For the American Family comes beneath that, but I was surprised by how little it talks down to its audience in general. It seems like it could be, fairly contemporary as a magazine. It doesn't seem terribly out of date, except for the medical advice. I'm sure we'll hear a lot. I didn't see any articles about how smoking soothes your T-zone. But maybe that was a little past its prime by 1960 anyway.
So she was born as Madge Cummings, May 31st, 1899, in Kinsley, Kansas. But according to both Wikipedia and the They Couldn't Put Me on the Shelf article, she was always interested in being an actress, but her father was a Methodist minister, apparently a traveling Methodist minister, a circuit rider, and he, looked down on acting. He discouraged her from doing that. In the article, she says, he wouldn't permit me to take part in school dramas unless they were called exercises.
Mm-hmm.
So she didn't do even any training for acting until she was 50 years old.
Right. Yeah, she had only begun, in 1949 is what she...
That should be right mathematically. Prior to that, she married a guy named James Lincoln Blake, and they had 2 sons, which is something that I got from the Today's Health, because Wikipedia, which I have now corrected, said that she had 1 kid and didn't give a gender. So it now says 2 sons.
Okay.
We don't know their names, but it's more information than we had.
Right. I didn't even notice that it had been changed, but you told me beforehand that it was incorrect. Did you cite this article?
I haven't gotten around to doing that yet. I'm going to have to set that up. Actually, I noticed that the next thing I'm going to read here on Wikipedia says citation needed, and this is mentioned in the article, so I think I'm going to just put a citation here. Now, this is quoting from Wikipedia. During World War II, Blake and her husband, James Lincoln Blake, worked in Utah on construction of the detonator for the atomic bomb and performed such jobs as testing equipment destined for the Manhattan Project. So that's not something you would really expect to read in the bio of Madge Blake, but there it is.
No, although I think in the article, the Bell mentions that she was involved in the Manhattan Project. She doesn't say, or he doesn't mention exactly what she and her husband did.
Yeah. So, but anyway, yes, she was involved in the bomb, and I don't mean any of the movies she appeared in.
Most of the movies she appeared in weren't bombs, actually.
No.
The first film that she appeared in 1949 was Adam's Rib, with Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn, which I don't know if it was a giant hit when it was released, but it's certainly considered one of the classics of screwball comedy now.
In the article credited to her, she recalls reading a magazine article about the acting business that said, if you're past 40 and overweight, forget it. You haven't a chance. But, she wasn't going to just take that. She tried anyway, and the article was wrong.
It certainly was.
So, and of course, there is a certain amount of luck, like there always is for everybody, I think, who succeeds in Hollywood. So, yeah, she enrolled at the Pasadena Playhouse when she was 50. Her cousin Milburn Stone, who played Doc Adams on Gunsmoke, helped her make contacts to get roles.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, then you mentioned Adam's Rib in 1949. She also appeared as an opera chorus member in Two Sisters from Boston in 1946, which sounds like she was just singing and not...
Right, that would be a very different prospect as far as getting a role, quote-unquote, is concerned.
A lot of the early roles are uncredited, which seems like, from my observations over the course of doing this podcast, it seems like being uncredited was a lot more common back then.
Well, certainly in films and in television as well, the credits were not nearly as long or complete as they tend to be. Well, you know what credits sequences look like in a Marvel movie, because there are 18 different special effects studios, tweaking the, flippant pixels that are all listed, every single member of the crew.
And the guy who delivered sandwiches on set, and, pretty much everybody's there.
Yeah, you don't get craft service and catering notices in the credits of television shows from the 50s or 60s.
No.
Not films either. So yeah, it's true that even though character actors tended to be paid well, sometimes better than the female lead, who's notoriously badly paid by comparison to the male lead in the 40s and 50s. Like Grace Kelly got $5,000 or $10,000 for playing the female lead in Rear Window, whereas Jimmy Stewart got part ownership of the film. Well, he was quite in demand, let's say, at the time. But character actors were paid pretty well. But I think part of the incentive for good pay, well, not incentive, but I think getting paid well was sometimes considered a good substitute for getting your name in the credits at the end. I was surprised that she's not even credited in Singing in the Rain, because she's one of the first characters who actually has a speaking part in that film. She plays a kind of Hedda Hopper type gossip columnist who interviews
Dora Bailey.
Yeah, she interviews both Dawn, that is the Gene Kelly character, and she tries to interview Lena Lamont, who Dawn is trying desperately not to let talk because her voice is so horrifying. That's part of the joke of the film, of course, is that they're moving from the silent era into the sound era, and her voice is just terrible and doesn't fit her face as far as the impressions of her kind of grandeur and sophistication are concerned. Anyway, but Madge Blake starts that film off with a bang. She's basically playing Aunt Harriet there. 12 years, I guess, before the fact.
Yeah, it was 1952.
14 years then.
So, yeah, 14 years. It seemed to me, looking at IMDb, that up to about 1956, most of her roles were uncredited, but then you don't see so many uncredited roles beyond around that point.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's see, what else was she in? A lot of these movies I'd never heard of, and I wasn't sure how significant they were at the time. Brigadoon jumped out at me because we did that musical at high school when I was a senior, and I was in the pit orchestra.
Yep, right.
And she plays Mrs. McIntosh in that. I don't remember what that character was. Also, with Brigadoon, there is a Batman connection. Owen McGivney, who played Angus in that film, played Baby Jane's butler in Flop Goes the Joker, wincing as Joker dumps paint on the dining room table and then chops it to pieces.
Well, Baby Jane is thrilled. Yeah, so let's look at some of these other... Brigadoon is another Gene Kelly musical, and at least according to Wikipedia, I think it's almost the lead of the article, Gene Kelly liked her so much. Yeah, this is a quote from Wikipedia. First paragraph, Gene Kelly had a special affection for her and included her in each of his films following her role in American in Paris. So Brigadoon is another Gene Kelly. Mm-hmm. So that's one reason why she's in it.
Now, one thing that was interesting to me, those two and 5 other films, all directed by Vincente Minnelli, and she was in all of them. And I'd love to know what this connection between her and Minnelli was, that he must have really liked her if he kept putting her in his movies.
Oh, yeah, pretty definitely. Even The Bad and the Beautiful, not one of Minnelli's non-musical films. She's got a role in that, too.
Yeah, so to name them all off here, we got American in Paris in 51, The Bad and the Beautiful in 52, The Bandwagon in 53, The Long, Long Trailer, that's Lucy and Desi, in 1954, Brigadoon, also 54. Designing Woman in 1957. And Bells Are Ringing in 1960, which also features Frank Gorshin.
Oh, that's a good reason to watch Bells Are Ringing.
And another Batman connection. I don't think Minnelli directed this, but in 1951, she was in Rhubarb, starring Orangey the Cat, who appeared in the Funny Feline Felonies.
A Catman connection. How about that? Good old Rhubarb. As Mrs. Emily Thompson, uncredited, says Wikipedia.
Of course.
Well, she appeared with David Wayne a couple of times. She was in Adam's Rib. She appears with David Wayne, who plays a kind of a frenemy, I guess you'd say, of Katharine Hepburn's, who keeps trying to steal her away from Spencer Tracy, to the point where I think Spencer Tracy throws a drink in his face. And also in M, the 1951 Joseph Losey adaptation of Fritz Lang's infamous and much revered German film, M, about a child murderer, very sensitive topic. But David Wayne actually plays the child murderer in M, and I'm not giving anything away because you find that out about him almost immediately as you find that out about Peter Lorre's character in the Fritz Lang M. So she was a co-star, although uncredited, as police station witness in that film too.
So then in the 50s, you start to see her appearing on, TV shows, and sometimes multiple times as the same character. Mm-hmm. Now, some of these shows I've never heard of. The Ray Milland Show.
Oh, Ray Milland.
Milland? Okay.
Yeah, he was a British actor who was fairly big in Hollywood. Never a kind of A-plus lister. But he appeared in Billy Wilder's film about alcoholism from the 1940s called The Lost Weekend, which was, quite well respected because it was one of the first films that gave a pretty realistic, non-comic delve, deep dive into alcoholism.
She was on I Love Lucy twice, including the George Reeves Superman crossover episode.
Yes, gosh, I'd love to see that. That's definitely worth a look. Kind of brushing elbows with DC already at that point in her career.
She showed up 8 times on the Jack Benny Show as the president of. I think I have it quite right here, but it was like she was president of the local chapter, I think, of Jack Benny's fan club. Mm-hmm. And, I have a best of collection of that show, which is not the best picture. I think it's all black and white, even stuff that was broadcast in color. But he did a lot of things on that show where he was on the stage and people who appeared to be audience members would come up on the stage and, they'd talk with him. And of course it was all planned. Sure. And, that included her bit. I think she and another woman would go up and talk to him about the fan club or something.
Yeah, she was supposedly the president of the Pasadena chapter.
Pasadena chapter, okay.
Look, ladies, you must have had something on your mind when you came up here. What is it?
Well, the reason we came down was we heard Andy Williams was going to be on your show, and we felt that he's so clever and so cute and dressed in that sweater, and we decided to knit you one.
You knitted me a sweater?
Yes, and here it is.
Oh, for heaven. Look at Andy. Look, it was my initials, a little small initial, and done by my fan club.
Oh, that's lovely. Mm-hmm. How long have you ladies been members?
Oh, about 1.5 years.
We joined when they lowered the age limit.
And and I think he took her on tour apparently, as well, or for a live show. He appreciated her that much, and also, she was a continuing character on his television show, so it made sense for him to have her in one of his live stand-up shows as well.
She was on Leave It to Beaver 11 times as Margaret Mondello from 1958 to 60. 29 episodes of The Joey Bishop Show in 1961 to 62. 27 episodes of The Real McCoys.
Yes, as Walter Brennan's on-again, off-again girlfriend, I guess.
I know nothing about that show.
No, I don't know anything about it either, but apparently Walter Brennan found her quite, charming and delightful. I think that's in Bell's article about Blake. as well. He was quite loyal to her. She apparently, fostered that kind of loyalty from producers and actors who were involved in producing their shows or films.
Yeah. She was on Dick Van Dyke Show twice.
Right. Yeah, I've only watched about the first 2 seasons of the Dick Van Dyke Show, so I don't recall when she was on, but I may have seen her and not remembered it.
Yeah, I think I did a Holy Deja Vu about one of her appearances.
Right.
Where she was alongside Burt Mustin, who I think played Old MacDonald in the Egghead episodes.
Yes. Da, 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 da. Gosh, I love that episode.
So Adam writes about her, of course, in Back to the Batcave, and I was going to read that section, and then it occurred to me that some time ago, quite a long time ago, Chris Kavanaugh sent us MP3s of Adam reading from the book. And I don't know that I have the whole book, but I do have that segment for sure. So let's listen to Adam talking about Madge.
Madge Blake was a lovely Aunt Harriet, a character who was created in the comic book just to give Bruce and Dick a reason to be secretive about their dual identities. Madge was 66 at the time. Madge was very much at ease speaking the words she wrote, reading them fluidly and movingly. But whenever the camera was rolling, Madge always paused, stammered, and groped, her voice fluttering. Usually it's the other way around, the camera bringing out the best in people. Not Madge. I don't know why this was, but I found it valuable in terms of the character, as it brought out something protective and even a little playful in Bruce. Several of our directors were impatient with Madge, and her parts were cut down whenever they did our show. However, one of them was downright hostile his first day on the set, and that was one of the few times I had to throw my weight around. He didn't like the way she was tripping over her words and told her to learn the speech or he'd give it to Alfred. When he was finished, I glanced across the set and told him that Aunt Harriet would be somewhat halting in her speech, concerned about the comfort of those in her charge, Dick and Bruce. Moreover, I told him that her age and sweetness provided an important balance to the intensity and insanity of the rest of the characters. I concluded my little speech by telling him to shut up and let her speak her lines in her own way without pressure. If not, I told him I'd give his job to Alfred. He shut up and let Madge act. The next day I found a lovely home-baked cake in my cottage on the lot. I don't think it was from the director.
Welcome to the Superman Fan Podcast. My name is Billy Hogan, and I will be your host. Before we begin our journey through the time barrier, please ensure that your red indestructible capes are securely fastened around your necks so that we may all travel safely into the past to explore the Silver Age adventures of the Man of Steel in the pages of Action Comics, Superman, Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen, Superman's girlfriend Lois Lane, and World's Finest Comics. After we return from our journey, I encourage you to go to the website, thesupermanfanpodcast.blogspot.com. I look forward to have you join me each week to explore the Silver Age adventures of the Man of Steel.
Are you tired of fanboy comics podcasts? Looking for a show that really appreciates the comics storytelling medium and how it works? A show that looks at comics from any genre and anywhere in the world, comparing the storytelling techniques of different creators in different comics cultures, with manga, newspaper strips, European comics, and more, discussed alongside mainstream US comics. A show that includes talks with well-known creators like James Robinson and Dan Jurgens, and with less famous creators that you really should know. And hey, we'll even critique your comic. If you're looking for that show, then you're looking for Deconstructing Comics, and it's right here at deconstructingcomics.com. Also available in iTunes and on Stitcher. This is Tim saying check out our show on Wednesdays. That's Deconstructing Comics. So, putting all these things together, and we're going to get into Aunt Harriet in a little bit, but I feel like Aunt Harriet and Madge Blake are pretty similar in a lot of ways. Maybe Madge just played herself most of the time. I'm not sure.
Well, yeah, there isn't, I've seen her in several of these roles, and there isn't a lot of variation in her persona, as you and I were, kind of chatting about before we started doing the actual podcast. She's not a stereotype exactly. It's almost as though she epitomizes the ideal of the nice grandmother who's, doting and solicitous and, very sweet but naive. And so, that tends to be the part she plays over and over again, which is what usually happened if you were known as a character actor in Hollywood and you didn't get credited much if you had like smaller speaking parts. Somebody like Thelma Ritter, back to Rear Window again, who's probably the best paid member of the cast in terms of actual like money doled out to her in Rear Window. She was a much sought after character actor. It tended to be have her name just below the leads on the credits of her films, and she played a wide variety of character types, even though she was always there was always this kind of undertow of gruffness about her character. She often played comic alcoholics as opposed to Ray Milland's non-comic alcoholic from The Lost Weekend. Like in, Pillow Talk, the Cary Grant Doris Day vehicle from the late 50s, early 60s. She plays the drunken but hilarious no-good-nick of a maid to Doris Day. But yeah, Madge Blake was kind of like, we need a grandma. They would stamp her in.
Yeah, but as we're going to get to a little bit later, one thing I notice about Aunt Harriet on the show is that she shows generosity a lot, and I think Madge was like that too. Certainly with the cake that Adam mentions. So, should just mention she died February 19th, 1969. Age 69, and less than a year after Batman ended. Of course, she only shows up twice in the final season.
Right, and Wikipedia even lists her as having a guest role rather than a front role. But
right,
did she ever appear She appeared in the opening credits, didn't she? No,
in the first two seasons.
Right,
but yeah, not in the third season.
Okay.
So, yeah, she was kind of a guest in those two episodes in season 3, where she's only listed at the end.
Right. Yeah, that's it might be one of the reasons why season 3 feels so different, although there are hundreds and thousands of different reasons why
yes.
why season 3 seems so different from the other two.
Yeah, well, and the weirdest thing about her appearances in season 3 is that she's never with Bruce and Dick. She's always with Gordon.
Right. So she's not even with Alfred.
I checked this. So, part of the problem was that there was no longer a Wayne living room set.
Right. Boy, that's strange. That's another kind of, earth-shattering difference between that season and the other two.
But her appearances in season 3 were at the Batman Riddler boxing match.
Yes.
Where she shows up talking to Gordon O'Hara and Barbara.
Right, and she, suddenly she becomes a fan of pugilism. It's like, I couldn't.
Yeah, I love a fight, she says.
Holy missing relatives. Look who's sitting down behind Commissioner Gordon.
Mrs. Cooper, how nice to see you. My daughter, Barbara.
Your daughter. How do you do, my dear? Hello. Oh, Commissioner, I've been such a wanderer. I just got back from the New Hebrides this evening. I didn't want to let the boys know. I wanted to surprise them. And there was nobody home, not even Alfred. And then I heard that Batman was fighting this mushy Nebuchadnezzar. And you know me, I love a fight.
Doesn't ring quite true, but they had to fit her into the episode somewhere, right. I guess, if she was available, because she was ill that season. So that's one of lots of reasons why there wasn't much time for Madge Blake to show up on the series.
And the other appearance is super odd because it's in Londinium.
Right.
She's on her way home from a North Cape cruise, she says, and she stops in Londinium because she thinks she can find Bruce and Dick there, but she can't find them. Gee, wonder why. And she stops by Venerable Ireland Yard and has tea with Gordon and Superintendent Watson.
I'm sorry to bother you here in venerable Ireland Yard, Commissioner.
Oh, no bother, Mrs. Cooper. I'm glad you found me.
I'm sure Bruce and Dick are someplace in Londinium, but I haven't been able to locate them. I'm on my way home from my North Cape cruise, and I hope to surprise them.
Well, Bruce has been tied up on Wayne Foundation business since his arrival, and young Mr. Dick, I believe, is doing some research at the various museums.
And we have various museums, Mrs. Cooper.
Well, I thank you both for your time.
It's been a pleasure.
Oh, Commissioner.
Yes, ma'am.
If you hear from either of them, will you please tell them that I'll be at the Londinium house for another day or so?
Of course.
Right. Yeah, sure.
In the office, this looks suspiciously like Gordon's office.
Yeah, funny what happens when you move the books around a little and turn the desk 90 degrees. Yeah, I mean, just at the level of logic, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Imagine I said, I have a friend who I know is going to be in Cincinnati this weekend. I'll just go to Cincinnati and see if I can find him. What? Of course, she's rich and she can walk right into, venerable Ireland Yard and probably, as she does, talk to a police inspector almost immediately. But nevertheless.
Yeah, well, it's the 60s and security is not what it is now.
Yes, that's right. Now, here's something I've been wanting to ask you, thinking about Adam West's account of her as, not altogether there as an actor, like not memorizing her lines sometimes or feeling flustered in front of the camera. Maybe it's just the way that Joseph Bell ghosts her voice in this Health magazine article, but she sounds a lot more together there. Very smart. And Bell mentions that she, was like top of her class in high school. Maybe she was beginning to dodder a little bit, but she sounds very determined.
Yeah.
And very sharp at, ways of getting herself noticed by various employers, not just casting directors. I don't know. There's no way that we can ever possibly answer this question, I guess. But his account of her feels off compared to what we know about her from this article, which is granted, good 6 years before the show started filming.
Well, let's see. What was his description of her? Delightful, endearing, slightly dithery.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, a lot of people seem to have thought of her as delightful and endearing.
Sure.
Gene Kelly, and so on. So it seems to be a consistent impression of her.
But the notion of her as, stumbling over her lines and, several directors wanting to, get her off the set and maybe even give her lines to Alfred. Mm-hmm. Maybe she's aggrandizing herself, or maybe Bell is, trying to make this point about her being a mother with an empty nest who decides that she really wants to finally follow her initial desire to become an actor that her parents wouldn't let her indulge. And talking about, memorizing lines and things, she doesn't say she has any trouble with lines, although I don't suppose most actors would want to broadcast that. But it doesn't feel... I guess I'm just saying that it doesn't quite mesh with the sense of her as a real professional that you get out of this article. And certainly she got tons of roles. So, if you were completely bothersome and impeded the progress of filming scenes, I don't think she would have appeared certainly in as many films and television shows as she obviously did.
You could say some of the differences that she's a little older by the time of Batman. That could have made a difference compared to how she was in 1955 or 60. Mm-hmm. But yeah, these Bat memoirs we found are often kind of skewed.
Yeah, let's say stretchy when it comes to the truth. They're elastic. Kind of like the elastic that sometimes broke in the interior of Mego action figures of the same characters. Yeah, and I wonder if there's a bit of like genderism and ageism going on here too. That they would take one look at her, and if she messed up anything, they would be directors and line producers and assistant directors might be extra hard on her. And just, kind of let their stereotypical understanding of old ladies run wild when she fumbled something on set. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I'm not trying to discredit Adam West's opinion, although, as you've just mentioned, there's some truth stretching going on in some of these memoirs that we've gone over the years on the podcast.
Mm-hmm. Happy birthday, Mrs. Cooper.
Many happy returns.
Merciful heavens to Betsy, it's Batman and Robin.
My friend Bruce Wayne contacted me through the commissioner. He said you'd always wanted to meet the dynamic duo.
Kind of like a birthday surprise, Mrs. Cooper.
It's an honor, ma'am.
And a pleasure, too.
May we take the liberty?
I think we better run, Batman.
That's right, Robin. We'll be late for that appointment we have tonight.
Happy birthday again, Mrs. Cooper.
Quickly, let's race to the Batmobile.
Oh, Alfred. Alfred, imagine! They kissed me! Will Bruce and Dick ever believe that when I tell them?
Oh, I'm sure they will. After all, I was a witness. Adam?
Okay, well, let's talk a bit about Aunt Harriet in the comics. So her first appearance is in Detective Comics 328, which is an odd story. So this is dated June 1964. So most of the story is about Alfred and Batman and Robin kind of missing each other as they're both kind of after the same crooks, and they thinking that the crooks have kidnapped or killed the other. Mm-hmm. And so Alfred is going to avenge Batman and Robin's deaths, and they're going to avenge Alfred's death. And then what ends up happening at the end is Alfred really does die. Sort of, temporarily. And so then later they're at home, and suddenly the tone of the story changes drastically. It becomes a lot more lighthearted in that last page or two as Aunt Harriet shows up. She's the sister of Dick's father, John. Dick had lived with her and her husband after his parents died. Her husband was badly injured and became an invalid, and she became the breadwinner. Bruce offered to be Dick's guardian to take some financial weight off of Harriet, which was something I got from fandom.com, I think. Mm-hmm. So in this story, she just shows up. She heard about Alfred, and she thinks that these two helpless boys need some help around the house. So she just kind of imposes herself on the situation.
Right.
And, of course, this creates a situation where now they're living with someone who doesn't know that they're Batman and Robin, and they have to hide it from her. And, of course, what often comes up here is that apparently she was added because of Dr. Frederick Wortham talking about how Batman and Robin looked like they were two gay guys living together. Mm-hmm. And so somehow having a woman around is supposed to cancel that out. I don't really see the logic of it. It just creates, a different kind of gay situation where the activities of the two are being hidden but from someone else. But I don't think it makes the situation look any less gay.
No, and in fact, it brings back to the focus, or it brings to focus, if they're trying to cover up their activities and hide them from Aunt Harriet, it seems all the more like an allegory for being closeted, because they keep, being forced to cover up who they are in their alternate lifestyles, their alternative lifestyles when they're, in their nightlife, if you will. So it ends up making something that apparently the editors were trying to obscure into like the perpetual focus, which might explain at least, in a sidelong way, why Aunt Harriet doesn't even show up very much in the issues in the issues of Detective or Batman in the 60s. Only when she actually. There are a few episodes or a few issues and stories where she shows up briefly just to kind of, because she's at Wayne Manor and Bruce and Dick are at Wayne Manor and talking about something. But she also occasionally is a plot device too.
Mm-hmm.
So she definitely, has to show up in those episodes or those issues. Excuse me, I'm stuck on episodes from talking about the series.
But yeah, she doesn't seem to have stuck around all that long, especially once Alfred became undead because of the TV show, of course. Because the TV show, they decided they wanted Alfred, but they also wanted Aunt Harriet for kind of the same reasons as the comics did. So she became a regular there. But then I guess after the show ended, they really phased her out. And of course, the whole thing in the comics had changed with, leaving Wayne Manor, going to, Robin going to college, Bruce living at the Wayne Foundation. And what I read online and then didn't put in my notes was that there was some suggestion that off panel she had gone back home when Bruce and Dick moved out of Wayne Manor.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and in Detective 356, when the outsider, who had been this kind of mysterious villain for a number of issues of Detective, at least, since Alfred's death, turns out to be Alfred.
Mm-hmm.
He was knocked out. He was, thought of it, didn't remember his past. Only remembered that he was supposed to be the opposite of whatever he actually was, which meant that he wanted to kill Batman and Robin instead of help them. That's a 9-year-old's idea.
It was opposite day. So.
That's right. Reminded of Calvin and Hobbes. It's opposite day. Do you want me to hit you? Yes. No. I mean, yes. I mean, no. But in Detective 356, which would have been October of 1966, in fact, probably, this story was written before any episodes were actually filmed, or when they were just beginning to film episodes of the television show, the Dozier show. Apparently the word had come down from on high that it was time to reanimate Alfred. And when Alfred comes back and shows up at the end of the story in Detective 356, he's introduced to Aunt Harriet. And Harriet, isn't this wonderful? Bruce says, Alfred has come home again. And Harriet, who's dusting, why does this poor woman have to, clean the entirety of Wayne Manor? There ought to be a staff, isn't there? I mean, it's not really the way that works.
Yeah, in a comic book, you don't have extras to pay. Surely there should be more staff.
Yeah, absolutely. Although I suppose it would seem less homey to have, 15 people cleaning Wayne Manor, because very few kids could identify with that sort of experience. So having, a kind of doting grandmother figure do it made more sense for identification purposes, I suppose. But she says, I'm quite agitated. I'll go and pack my things. Now that your trusty butler has returned, you won't need me anymore. But Bruce, ever the gallant, says, nonsense, Aunt Harriet, we all need you. And Dick says, holy relations, I'll say.
What kind of relations?
What kind of relations are we talking about, Dick? And Alfred says, indeed we do, ma'am. May I venture to say that I need you most of all? Oh, baby. Since I'm not entirely well yet, and your cooking will speed my recovery. Well, what if she's a terrible cook? Oh, bless you all. I'll go and prepare a dinner to celebrate our reunion. The end. And that's kind of the end of Aunt Harriet as a character as well in this comic. It's when you mentioned that the backstory is that her husband was an invalid, it has an eerie coincidental relationship with Madge Blake's experience, since her husband was apparently incapacitated for 2 decades by a couple of car accidents.
Yeah, early in their marriage, they had a couple of car accidents, which apparently didn't hurt her all that badly. But yeah, he was he was an invalid for a long time. So, yeah, that's interesting parallel.
But it also makes me, think all the more fondly of Madge Blake, since she was clearly raising two kids pretty much on her own if her husband was an invalid, certainly doing the physical work of parenting, which is not that different from what women were expected to do all the time, 24/7, in the 1940s. But anyway.
Aunt Harriet in the comics was doing housework. And it's interesting to notice how on the show, at the very beginning, we do see her doing housework. I think the very first time she shows up in High Diddle Riddle, she doesn't even have any lines, but she's on the stairway and carrying like some laundry or something, like, clean laundry. And
linens or something.
Dick is coming down the steps holding that airplane, like he's 14.
He's a chubby 8-year-old. Just a little taller than most.
And I think there are some references early on to her cooking, but after a while, it seems more like she just lives there.
Yeah.
And Alfred's doing all the work.
Right, she's doing her society stuff and, putting together functions for Bruce at Wayne Manor, as she does in the Mr. Freeze Otto Preminger arc.
I went through the show and pretty much cataloged all her appearances. There were a few early on that were just kind of, those two scenes, and nothing much really happened, and I didn't write them down. But I took a look at every Aunt Harriet appearance. I mean, I didn't sit down and watch the whole series, but I was kind of skimming through it each episode on the DVDs. And then I kind of looked at what kind of patterns might have emerged here. Now, I should say this is an exercise in overthinking it, because a lot of the kind of things that you could call Aunt Harriet character moments are just there because they fit the theme of the episode. And they're not really meant to tell us something about Aunt Harriet. They're just meant to fit the theme. But they're there, so we can pretend that they're trying to tell us something about Aunt Harriet. And there are some consistent themes that come up.
And by the way, Tim, your notes about these appearances of Aunt Harriet were hugely helpful to me, because I wasn't expecting, when you said you were going to take some notes about it, I expected you were just going to, watch a few episodes and kind of gather some info together. But, suddenly, a couple of weeks ago, Tim sends me this huge... It's not huge because she doesn't appear that many times, but this amazing kind of run through of all of her parts, and with commentary, like, oh no, Aunt Harriet has sexuality. No, but anyway, that was a huge help to me, and it made it easier for me to cherry pick the episodes and even the scenes from episodes that I watched to prep for this episode of our podcast.
Episode 6, doesn't want Dick watching the news about Joker. Such sordid goings on.
Well, I can think of one episode in particular that we've recently talked about, when she shows up, episode where she's just there to kind of help cement the theme of the episode, like boxing in the 3rd season Riddler episode, where she shows up in one of her only two appearances in season 3, because I love a good fight. But, that's not what we would expect of Aunt Harriet, but she's clearly there both because, she was able to appear in the episode. Maybe her illness, had abated a little bit at that point. And, she's roped in just to mention the boxing match, just so there's some justification for her showing up there. But are there, what are other examples of her appearing mostly for the sake of hammering the nail of the theme of
Let me go through my notes on the patterns here. So something that was a little inconsistent was, sometimes she can really see through BS. Like when Harry is trying to trick her into thinking that he's Chandel.
Yes.
But where she has a blind spot, of course, is when Bruce and Dick make excuses about when when they're actually going out to fight crime, and she believes that they're fishing.
Yes, and she might get really irritated with them for fishing or going to some stupid lecture in stupid downtown Gotham City. Stupid. She'll get mad or frustrated with them for missing their dinner. For very motherly / grandmotherly reasons. But she's never mad at them because she thinks that they're BSing her the way that the Aunt Harriet from the comics gets frustrated with them. I wonder why the bat phone, or I wonder why the phone always makes that buzzing noise. It turns out it's the bat phone line that's somehow making the regular house telephone buzz. But she gets irritated by that, and she puts things together puts the pieces together. Oh, so Bruce and Dick are always running out when there's some kind of trouble. Or, I tell them about a problem that one of my friends has, and suddenly, that problem was taken care of by Batman and Robin. I wonder. So, but there's no such suspicion on Aunt Harriet's part, as far as I can remember, and certainly your episode rundown backs that up.
Yeah, it sounds like comics Aunt Harriet is more of a detective than TV show Aunt Harriet.
Well, yeah, in one episode of Detective Comics, she is a detective after all, so why shouldn't she show up in Detective primarily? But in one, she thinks that she sees them, or she finds the elevator down to the Bat Cave, and actually goes to the Bat Cave and says, I wonder if this means Bruce and Dick or Batman and Robin. Or maybe it's just a convenient place to have the Bat Cave. Maybe they're just
renting out the space to Batman and Robin.
So she's so determined to find out whether her hunch, quote unquote, is correct, that she spreads black pitch all over, like the entire roadway between, several miles of road from what it looks like between Wayne Manor and Gotham City, so that the tires of the Batmobile will pick it up.
Oh, the Silver Age! This is so Silver Age.
Yeah, speaking of needing a staff of 15, there's an aerial view of where she's painted, the pitch on the ground or on the pavement or gravel, whatever it is, and it's ginormous. But she's quite industrious. So, yeah. But yes, hard to imagine Madge Blake, bending over a paint can on the asphalt, trying to. Make sure that she has some kind of clue to whether her hunch is correct.
Anyway, so she, on several occasions, doesn't want Dick to even know about any crime that's going on. Very protective of him.
Yes, because he's a chubby 8-year-old.
She likes going to museums.
Yes. She always wants to go to the museums where things are about to get stolen, for example.
Yeah, or like at the end of one of the King Tut arcs, or maybe it was the end of the Riddler Inca's, Ring of Wax story. They go to the museum in the tag scene.
Mercy alive. Have you ever seen such beautiful jewels? They must have cost a king's ransom.
It says here that they found the jewels in a secret panel in their sarcophagus. They were hidden to guard against grave robbers, who were very prevalent in olden days.
Well, thank goodness we don't have anything like that to worry about today.
So she shows a lot of modesty. There are a couple of occasions. So I think the first time we see her with Batman and Robin is when they wish her happy birthday. Which is, I just put the numbers of the episodes in here. It's episode 32 of season 1. And after that, the next couple of times that she meets them, she says, "Oh, I don't suppose you remember me. You probably don't remember me." Like in His Honor the Penguin, I think she says that, for one example.
I'm sure you don't remember me, Batman. I'm Harriet Cooper, Dick Grayson's aunt.
Of course I remember you, Mrs. Cooper.
She shows generosity a lot. So, like in Clock King, she's organizing a surprise party for Bruce, and she buys that clock for him. She makes a large donation to Batman in His Honor the Penguin. She sets up the playroom with the slot car racing track at the end of season 2, at the end of the Duo Defy. And Bruce I think maybe he's actually Batman in the scene, but he recognizes this in Green Ice when he says, "Don't forget, we placed the entire burden of this reception on her stout, unselfish shoulders." Talking about that reception that she, organizes at the pool.
Mm-hmm. Where Mr. Freeze freezes everyone into the pool after having, his fake Batman and Robin get defeated at the hands of his hench people.
She likes to surprise Bruce and Dick. Both of her season 3 appearances, she says she wanted to surprise them. So we mentioned in our previous episode with Nancy how in That Darn Catwoman, she asks Alfred why she's not supposed to go into the study.
Right.
Because it's the man cave.
Mm-hmm. To the man bulls.
In the similar vein, in the Joker's Provokers, she's giving her whist group a tour of the house and decides she should take them in Bruce's study. Just because it's part of the house. And it's only Joker's time machine that prevents it from happening.
Right.
Or the handsome residence of millionaire Bruce Wayne.
I never go inside Bruce's study, but as long as I'm taking you girls on a tour of the house, we'll just...
Yeah, that's a great moment. I had forgotten about that until I saw it in your notes. You can just imagine somebody reaching for the head of Shakespeare. Oh, what an interesting bust. I wonder if I could pretend to choke it to death. Oh, the head fell back.
She's concerned about public morals, as when she protests the nude scene in Penguin's movie. And, she's so shocked when she finds Alfred and Dawn Robbins asleep in the foyer of Wayne Manor. Or when he's walking with a beauty contestant on each arm in Batman Makes the Scenes at the end of season 1.
Yeah.
Alfred!
And nevertheless, she falls hard for Chandel, and, seems all but ready to marry him, and she goes to have, romantic trysts with him regularly. Until she discovers the undertow of shenanigans.
Yeah, Chandel, that's really where we get some character depth on Aunt Harriet. Mm-hmm. We see her in a range of emotions. Aunt Harriet in love, Aunt Harriet mad as hell, Aunt Harriet mourning when she thinks Bruce and Dick have died. In the darkroom explosion that they set up to make Chandel and Harry think they had died.
Right.
So, yeah, you can really understand Aunt Harriet better, I think, from that, where she's really more of a main character in that arc and not just those two always running off scene.
Right. She's really necessary to what makes that arc move, what makes it go, and gives it at least a little bit of emotional depth.
Very much just to fit the theme of the episode, she likes to keep up with trends. In The Black Widow, she announces she's decided to go mod by buying a new black outfit and says, "I'm such a beatnik."
Love it.
And also in Hot Off the Griddle, she dances to the Catusi in Wayne Manor. Mm-hmm. Making those claws with her hands.
Oh, right.
Come on, Alfred. It's easy. Don't be an old fuddy-duddy.
I'm afraid my dancing days ended with the Lambeth Walk, madam. Doctor's orders, war injury.
Isn't it funny that, all of the trends that go through Gotham City seem to have something to do with villains? I wonder, does that make the Bat Guano, the sales of, billions of plastic Batman toys those first couple of years more suspect somehow? The capitalism and trendiness are evil, the product of supervillainy? I don't know.
Yeah. And the other thing I noticed, which I'd never really glommed onto before, and this is not so much fitting the theme of an episode, but on multiple occasions she turns out to be an educator. She's giving Dick a piano lesson in both The Joker is Wild and in Shoot a Crooked Arrow.
Mm-hmm.
And she also is helping him with geometry in Batman's Anniversary and with Greek in The Greatest Mother of Them All. along with Bruce. Bruce is also helping him in that scene.
Sure.
Yeah, so she's not just, concerned about Dick finding out that crime exists, but also, she's trying to help him with his studies.
Yeah. She's at those moments she's less like a stereotypical worrywart mother figure and more like an actual mother, I guess. Like she's taking some of those responsibilities over and trying to nurture Dick since he's been orphaned.
Yeah, so those were my observations outside. I'm not going to sit here and read all my catalogs of the scenes, but maybe I could pick out a few choice ones here.
Right.
Well, there's the Penguin's Nest, where, she gets her bracelet stolen.
At the restaurant.
In part 1. And is as puzzled as Gordon and O'Hara at Bruce's suggestion that rather than simply arrest Penguin, they should call in Batman. And then in part 2, she's shocked as Penguin breaks into Wayne Manor with a large pie. And during the fight, she beans Chickadee with a vase, then faints. She also faints in the next episode when Dick's dance teacher is revealed to be Catwoman.
Right.
And in that same episode, she has tea with Chad and Jeremy. And they play on her fear that rock stars are destructive morons.
There you are. I hope you like it. Help yourself to cream and sugar.
I always think tea's so civilized, don't you?
I didn't realize this custom had reached the colonies.
Oh, my, yes. We serve tea every afternoon.
Oh, great.
When Bruce told me that you were going to stay here, I'd expected...
Now, don't tell me. You expected two grubby morons to come barging in here and start smashing up the place, didn't you?
Well,
All right, Chad. You start slashing the cushions. I'll go in and deal with the crockery in the kitchen.
Right.
Oh, don't worry, love. We're not really like that, It's just our image.
And is amazed at a very Stanley Ralph Ross gag that a rock star aspires to be a brain surgeon.
Yeah, that really is that's Stanley Ralph Ross to a T. Yeah, that's kind of at odds with her desire to be trendy, interestingly enough. It seems as though her, at least for Stanley Ralph Ross, her tendency to fall into trends or get interested in what the mods and the rockers are doing these days falls apart for the sake of a good gag, at least what he thinks is a good gag.
Yeah. But then at the end of part 2 of Chad and Jeremy, they're at the concert, and when Bruce says that every era has its own music, she chimes in, of course, the essence of progress is change. So there she sounds really progressive. And not someone who would think that rock stars are destructive morons. or would never aspire to be brain surgeons.
Right. Are you a moron, Mr. Chad? Goodness gracious me. In general, it seems that, having her conservatism around both reminds us of just how crazy their costumes and their lives are, which does get brought up in the context of Aunt Harriet from time to time. But it also gives, I think, kids something to identify with a little bit more as well, since they all know figures in their lives who are at least supposed to be as sweet and doting and concerned and sometimes irritating as Aunt Harriet is.
So, yeah, that's pretty much what I've got. Did you have any final thoughts about Madge or Aunt Harriet?
Well, I've watched a couple of arcs, or at least Aunt Harriet scenes from a couple of arcs pretty closely this week. One was the Mad Hatter arc from season 2, in which Batman and Robin, supposedly become skeletons. Their their radiation strips them down, except for their cowls and their underpants. And she's kind of the lead, a lead mourner there.
Yeah, she's working the phones.
Right. She's apparently thousands of Gotham City women who, would have gladly thrown their panties on stage if Batman and Robin had made personal appearances, are apparently, getting ready for the funeral service, the memorial service, what have you. And then, Bruce and Dick try to convince her that Batman and Robin are definitely still alive, which gives her, cause for pause later when she realizes that they were right.
Yeah, and Bruce and Dick realize they should have kept their mouths shut, but...
Right, as they always should when they, try to do things like try to, console her with facts they shouldn't know. So I watched that arc, and she's presented maybe necessarily for the plot, but certainly it helps to thicken out her character as very pro-Batman and Robin. She's not like, Aunt May and Spider-Man, being turned off by Spider-Man, thinking that he's scary or evil or whatever. So she's an advocate on the show, more so than she is in the comics, because in neither Batman nor Detective does she ever really have much to say about Batman and Robin, except that she suspects Bruce and Dick of being Batman and Robin when she finds the Batcave under their house. Scratch, I wonder. Sorry, that just never gets old. She's, there aren't too many characters, including Batman and Robin, who are really brain trusts in the early New Look episode or issues from the 60s. So there's that, and then the other episode, I watched Chandelle pretty closely. And
I watched the whole thing.
Your note on that was that she, oh my gosh, Aunt Harriet has sexuality. But then there's the Marcia Queen of Diamonds episodes from season 2, in which she impersonates Batman's supposed wife, which is pretty great. It's a great moment. She comes in, dressed in black, and is supposedly 7 years Batman's wife, and Mrs. Batman, as Alfred calls her. I wonder if that's on the wedding license or marriage license. And he's posing as her attorney to sue for bigamy or whatever the proper charge would be. But she's very willing to help wherever and however she can, which the writers wouldn't have had to use her that way. So that feels like, yes, it's got something to do with the plot. It's important to make the plot go forward, but it's hard to imagine the writers' table and the producers even coming up with a story where Batman nearly gets married, horror of horrors, for a campy show. But they wouldn't have had to do that episode at all. It's hard for me to imagine them nearly getting Batman married unless they'd already had a plan to get him out of it. And in this case, it involves not only the butler but also the stay-at-home aunt. So I think her character is not just a plot device at moments like that, and I think it has a cascading effect on the rest of the series or other appearances, because we always can't help but think about what she's done and what kind of character she was in her more meaty appearances when we see even those fleeting moments in other episodes.
Hello, I'm Ken Holzhauser, and if you're looking for something new in comic books, may I recommend my newest comic, The Quick and the Dad, a love letter to the DC, Marvel, Archie, and Harvey comics of my youth. This comic has everything. It has spaceships, dad jokes, alien invasions, time travel, supervillains, and so many bad puns. Hopefully you'll like it. It's the cutest comic you've never heard of, and it's available today in print and digital from indieplanet.com. That's The Quick and the Dad. Join that other dynamic duo, won't you?
Coming up, Adam West and Vincent Price watch themselves in an Egghead clip shown on The Mike Douglas Show. Holy Deja Vu returns, and we read your mail in the Bat Inbox. This show is listener-supported through Patreon. Join us for $2 a month and get access to outtakes from every To the Bat Polls episode, including this one. Trivia quiz videos on 20th century entertainment. Patrons also get the right to vote on future Bat Polls topics. For $4 a month, you also get the right to have an ad for your own project on the show once a month and hours of exclusive podcasts, including our monthly issue-by-issue walk through the early years of The Amazing Spider-Man. So go to patreon.com/deconcomics and select the level of your monthly donation. Thanks for listening and thanks for your support.
Adam, we have a little film clip to show. Now, what will our audience see? You know about the film clip.
Oh, yes, I heard that...
Is this the one that Vincent is part of?
Yes.
One of the ones that I did.
Vincent Price, in this one, plays the heinous and evil villain, Egghead.
But I'm an
I love that.
excruciating villain. I am so exciting in it.
Roll it, please, Ernie.
All of you are approximately the right age, in your early 30s. But I've eliminated you, Mr. Tyler, because you're left-handed. No, the Caped Crusader is not a port-sider, and you, Mr. Savage, are out because of your accent. So aside from a couple of aging rock and roll singers, you, Mr. Wayne, are the only Gotham City millionaire who is athletically inclined with excessive agility. Therefore, you must be Batman.
You realize this is all a waste of time.
Not at all, Mr. Wayne. My machine has a rather eccentric and ugly side effect. In removing all of the knowledge from your brain, it will leave you an empty-headed fop. And there's no use struggling, Mr. Wayne. You're being held there by an electromagnetic force.
I'm leaving. Things like this give me a headache.
All right, Benedict. Turn on the machine. It will take a moment or two to warm up, and then we shall see if my exceptional logistics are correct. But even if I'm wrong about your being Batman, Mr. Wayne, your brain will be utterly destroyed.
How diabolical, how inhuman, how excruciating will the world's greatest criminal mind extract the true identity of Batman? The explanation to these and other electric questions tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel.
I can't wait till tomorrow.
Well, are we going to see the rest of it?
No.
Are you Batman?
They'll never know.
I'll never know.
Don't tell about my secret crime-fighting disguise, Vincent.
No, I won't.
What a magnificent Geronimus, Dr. Gourley. Beautiful. And that is the finest specimen of Valparima I have ever seen. But look over there, Dr. Gourley. Oh, how hideous. What is it? A goldfish.
Holy Deja Vu. Two zoologists examined the fish swimming in the fountain before the Joker steals one as part of his Zodiac crimes. But wait a minute, doesn't one of them look familiar? And wait, isn't this a scene from Batman? That's not how Holy Deja Vu is supposed to work.
I'm reminded of a Batman episode by this Batman episode.
In fact, his face looks familiar because we've seen him elsewhere on Batman. His name is Milton Stark, and he plays Irving Bracken in The Black Widow Strikes Again.
By the way, Mr. Bracken, doll, bring me 20 or 30 thou in small unmarked bills. Can you do that for me?
Beneficial is here to benefit you, Mrs. Black. You're sure that will fill your needs?
How sweet of you to ask. Make it 40.
Oh, but also, though it's a little hard to see his face, you can catch him as an art browser in the final segment of Flop Goes the Joker.
I don't understand it at all. It must be very profound.
Notice the large green blob.
Yes, I see what you mean. Very profound.
And then, as we were preparing for Women in Season 2 Part 2, I spotted him again in an uncredited role as Mr. Tamber, who reports to Batman that the museum's collection of 15th century chainmail armor is missing in the Penguin Marcia 3-parter.
Of course.
Batman, thank heaven you're here.
What's wrong, Mr. Tamber?
The museum's priceless collection of 15th century chainmail armor, it's gone.
That's impossible. Our Bat
There is one factor I could have overlooked, Robin. The metal alloy in that armor could have set up a magnetic field which blocked our homing transmission.
You have to get them back, Batman. That unique alloy was invented by the great master, Benvenuto Violini.
Violini?
Yes, he made the chainmail armor out of it.
So why does this guy keep getting parts on Batman? Why is he always hanging around the set? The answer turns up in the February 1994 issue of Cinefantastique magazine, on both pages 9 and 13. In the first, he's in front of the pub. I'm showing Paul here over Skype. He's in front of the pub from the Londinium story with Adam West in costume and director Oscar Rudolph. There's Milton Stark.
Okay.
In the second, he's on the Batcave set with Adam and Burt in costume. And as the captions of both photos tell us, he was a dialogue coach.
There he is with the script in this photo. Nice. Interesting.
IMDb doesn't list his Batman dialogue coach credits. I'd put them in myself if I knew just which episodes he could be credited for. Londinium, clearly. And I found evidence online that he worked on The Preminger Freeze, The Archer, and Siren. I'm wondering if he was there throughout the run of the show.
Yeah, on IMDb, he's only listed as additional crew. They don't dig quite that deeply into what individual credits actually were.
Yeah, his only listed credits as a dialogue coach or dialogue director are for 14 episodes of The New Breed, a crime drama starring Leslie Nielsen that didn't make it past the 1961-62 TV season. His other listed acting credits are 5-bit parts on the sitcom Julia, and I'd bet he must have been a dialogue coach on that show too, if he showed up so frequently on camera. And then 1 each for Daniel Boone, The Virginian, and Cannon. And I have a feeling that the eagle-eyed among us might be able to catch other glimpses of him on Batman, so let us know if you find him again.
Right. He could have been used to say, put in front of the camera in a crowd scene to say watermelon, cantaloupe, among all of the other extras.
The only other info I was able to find about him, so he died in 2016 at age 103.
I know. It's just, that was my first guess as to why he showed up in Batman so often. Could it be because he lived to be 103? But the show was only on for 2.5 years.
He and his wife Judith left $2 million to support the arts at UCLA.
Nice.
So many of his contributions to the arts are not well documented, but he continues to have an effect. So, and he must have made a lot of money as a dialogue coach, I guess.
I guess so, or made some spectacular investments.
Yeah, maybe that was it. Bat Inbox. This time we just have one. It's from the Batman 66 Facebook page, commenting on the False Fates script episode.
Okay, this is from Robert Bova, whom I don't believe has written this before.
I don't know the name, no.
Yeah, it doesn't seem familiar. So, hi, Robert. Robert writes, my brother and I met Malachi Throne. I still want to call him Malachi, since because of the Malachi brothers on Happy Days. We never met, but were, often, or maybe that was Laverne and Shirley, where they would go on a double date with the Malachi brothers. I don't know. Either way, Malachi, my brother and I met Malachi Throne at a Star Trek convention in New York City in 1986. He did a Q&A and was asked why in the opening of the Batman episodes that he appeared in season 1, why False Face was listed as question mark. The actor playing him, and question mark as False Face, as we all know. The reason was Mr. Throne thought he was going to portray different characters wearing different makeup for each, and that when he was supposed to be Commissioner Gordon or whomever, they just used the actors in his place. Mr. Throne then asked for his name to only appear in the end credits, as he felt disappointed.
Well, and he doesn't mention it, but the mask was, I think a big part of the disappointment. Rather than makeup, he just wore the mask most of the time.
Just to single him out as the supervillain, the villain of the episode. Curiously, he was asked also his thoughts on the 1966 Batman being lighthearted instead of being a dark and serious project. Mr. Throne then answered, "Why should a light-hearted Batman be any less legitimate than a dark and serious Batman?" A question Tim and I ask ourselves pretty frequently, I think. I recall also at the time there was publicity about who was portraying Falseface. There were rumors at the time that Frank Sinatra really enjoyed watching Batman and wanted to be on in some capacity. Yes, I've heard that rumor too. So there was a brief time where they thought Frank Sinatra was Falseface. I thought with your theme, maybe you might have some interest in this. Yeah, definitely. It's always cool to hear thoughts from after the fact from actors who appeared on the show.
Supposedly there were rumors, weren't there, that Sammy Davis Jr. was playing him? It seems like that would have been pretty easy to poke holes in, because I think it's pretty obvious that he's being played by a white guy.
Well, and also, Sammy Davis Jr. was quite short. So, to have him play Commissioner Gordon, people of, men of more average, but, height on the tall side, wouldn't be very convincing.
Well, to have Neil Hamilton step in and he's suddenly a lot taller than the guy with the mask on.
Yeah, absolutely. And what happens when he calls everyone Cat? Hey, Cat. Groovy Cat. Of course, he would have to read the lines that he was given. I'm thinking of his appearance on All in the Family, which was brilliant. But, he was definitely Sammy Davis Jr. and nobody else. It would be harder to think of him as having a malleable identity. Anyway.
So, be sure to drop us a line. Of course, there's always a thread on the 66 Batman message board, which has been kind of quiet lately. Or you can email us at batpoles@deconstructingcomics.com, or comment on the Batman 66 Facebook page that I am one of the administrators of, or send us smoke signals or...
Yeah, Semaphore, we have to be able to see you from a distance, but, I'm sure we can work something out. I'm very curious to hear people's thoughts about Madge Blake and other anecdotes you may have heard or, news stories you might have found. And thanks again to Mr. Glee for finding this article from the AMA Health magazine, because, to hear her speaking more or less in her own voice, although she is, as it is an as-told-to story, added, a lot. It filled in a lot of gaps for our thinking about Madge Blake's career, as well as thinking about how her character comes off in the series.
Yeah. Okay, so you're going to hear what next episode is in my voiceover at the end. So, so thanks for listening, and we'll be back in 2 weeks at the same Bat RSS feed.
And now off to Tim's voiceover.
Check the show notes for the Mr. Tabs guitar tutorial version of the theme, which you hear behind me, a video of Madge Blake on The Jack Benny Show, and the link to the March 1960 issue of Today's Health magazine with the 2 Madge Blake articles. Thanks to David Maska and Chris Cavanaugh for the Mike Douglas Show clip you heard in this episode. If you have any interesting Bat audio to pass on, or you'd like to make a donation to the show through PayPal, or you just want to drop us a line, the address is batpoles@deconstructingcomics.com. You can also comment on the thread for each episode and each script at 66batman.com/forums, or on our blog at tothebatpoles.libsyn.com. We're on Twitter at DeconComics, and on the Deconstructing Comics channel on YouTube. And on that YouTube channel, I've just made available a few of our early TV trivia videos, previously only available on Patreon. So look up Deconstructing Comics on YouTube and take a look. You can hear outtakes from this and every episode of To the Batpoles and vote for topics for future episodes by supporting us at patreon.com/deconcomics. You can also help us out by shopping via deconstructingcomics.com/Amazon, by sharing our episodes on your social media, and by subscribing to the show on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. And spread the word. Let all your friends who are Batman 66 fans know about the show. About that next episode blurb, there are several different irons on the fire right now, and we're waiting to hear from other people. So the topic of our next episode is a total coin flip at this moment. If I tease something, it could very well end up being incorrect. So, sorry to keep you in suspense, but we'll all just have to wait and see what our next episode will be about. See you in 2 weeks. To the Bat Pulls is a production of DeconstructingComics.com.